So let me just walk you through some of the Aussie currencies here, and then we'll talk about the others. Okay, so I've highlighted a couple of Aussie pairs that is worth looking at for the RBA statement later. Okay, so we have Aussie dollar, Euro odd, and pound odd. Aussie Kiwi is not so much, no, not that clear. So Aussie Kiwi is more of like just a general trade that we can focus on. Okay, it's nothing related to Aussie because that is not a clear setup as of now. But Aussie dollar, Euro odd, and pound odd, there is a potential setup you can look at for RBA later. Okay, so let's take a look at Aussie dollar. Now, first up, you have this 4-hour technical pattern, okay, which is basically an impulse, a flag. So you expect this to continue to the downside. Aussie dollar, you have seasonal trends in play as well. That means from now until 2nd September, we are looking at Aussie having a high chance of falling. Okay, so you have the pattern, you have the seasonal force, you have the upcoming catalyst as well from RBA. And if you go down to the 1-hour time frame, okay, it's not the best ideal setup, but it's still a potential one that you can use this method to write the catalyst, right? The news events. So we have a general sense of direction. From higher time frame, we are looking at the sell. From seasonal perspective, we are looking at the sell. We rather focus on the sell. Okay, and we are then leveraging on the news event to perhaps give us a move to the downside, right? So that is where, when you think about all this, when you piece them together, you will want to look up for an entry execution method that kind of like give you that confirmation when you enter. Okay, the idea is we will then look out for a breakout trade, okay, instead of a retracement. Why? Because the breakout strength, the breakout trade execution method, the strength is that you only get in when price move in that direction that you have anticipated, right? And if it goes against the opposite direction, then nothing will happen to your trade, right? So that's the beauty of what we call a breakout. Okay, so in terms of Aussie dollar, then one potential setup over here, okay, is you go down to the 1-hour time frame, you start to see a bit of like consolidation at this point in time. Okay, so you have that big 1, 2, 3, you have this impulse down, and then of course you did have a pretty deep retracement and pretty impulsive retracement, and right now it's doing this consolidation, right? So we have a clear sense of direction. Okay, from 4-hour time frame, we want to look for sell. From seasonal, we want to focus on the sell, and therefore in this case here, we'll probably just focus on the sell, right? So what you can then set up over here on Aussie dollar is to look up for a potential break, okay, below this 1-hour time frame. In this case here, the price is about 7355. Okay, and the idea is, if RBA were to release a statement and it's negative for the Aussie dollar, okay, and this starts to go down, then you will probably have a pretty decent trade of getting in, and ideally you want this to go very, very impulsively. All right, so that's the idea of it. And if let's say the statement is pretty hawkish and this just keep going up, then nothing will really happen to your trade. Okay, but one thing you need to consider, of course, is the whipsaw condition, which means when the news release, this can happen as well, right? Okay, and kind of tag you in and then just go back up. Okay, so nothing is certain. Okay, but understand the risk. That's why you still need maybe a stop here. Okay, now for me, why I'm looking at a 1-hour breakout instead of, let's say, going at the 4-hour time frame and put it below here, is because of the idea that right now we are actually leveraging on the upcoming news to ride the wave, right? The idea is the news will create the volatility and you want to ride it. So if let's say you put it too far away from where the current price is in its consolidation area, then by the time price comes down here and in fact get you in, the momentum might be already used up quite a bit, right? You think about it, okay? And the next, what's left for it to continue lower might not be there anymore. Okay, so that's the reason why we are a little bit more aggressive if you're looking at the news, right? Because you're literally capitalizing on that short-term burst of volatility that can come from the news. Okay, So one way to look at it is like that. Okay, so you can actually put a pretty tight stop, I would say. Okay, of course, you need to also factor in a little bit of your spread. So if let's say you put this here, that's about 7375. So that's about 20 pips, right? So it's more towards an intraday setup. Okay, but that's how you can consider it. Okay, so before we put that in, I'll take a look. I'll bring you and take a look at the other two setups, right? Euro odd and pound odd. Okay, so that's on Aussie dollar, right? Hope it's clear, right? Quite straightforward. The only little detail here is the execution side of things, right? Because of the news. Okay. Now, the other two setup here we're looking at is Euro odd and Pound odd. Pretty much they're similar. You can see the pattern, right? Again, Euro and Pound correlated, right? Correlation is very high. Now, Euro odd, let's take a look at a higher time frame here as well. Okay, from the daily time frame perspective, we do get this structure. Okay, which is again looking more like a flag. Okay, so the decision here is definitely focused on the downside. Okay, at least for now. 4-hour time frame is not the clearest setup. Okay, but one thing to note is that we do have, you know, the break of that high, but it's not something that is too great. Okay, because of how this push looks pretty fast. One thing that can add up in our favor is, of course, the RSI divergence, okay, which means this two top here has a slight lag in momentum, okay, but the ideal setup really comes on 1 hour, okay. So the higher time frame on Euro odd does not really give us much of an indication or, you know, confluence, but the 1 hour time frame does give us this very clear setup. Okay, so from this high here, you can see on the 1 hour time frame after this rejection, we are now doing a very decent flag. Okay, this flag here is more or less, I would say, pretty perfect. Okay, because of, first off, very clear impulse. Second, you can see how the flag is actually taking some time to develop in relation to the impulse push. Okay, so it's more or less this combination here is ideal. Hey, so very straightforward. If you're looking at something like that, then what you'll be doing is looking for same thing, breakout entry execution method. And the level here to potentially look out for is 6095. Okay, just below this low. And the logic is the same, right? We are focusing on the downside. So if let's say the news catalyst push this lower, then we'll get involved. Ideally, we want this to just go impulsive. Okay, and what happens is immediately you just shift your stops to break even after that. If let's say this goes the opposite, then, you know, nothing to worry about. Okay, but at the same time, as I always mention, the worst case scenario in this case here is, of course, a wet saw. Okay, so that's the setup on Euro odd. Okay, again, pretty clear, right? I think it's quite straightforward. Okay, the details is really in the execution and the thought process as to why we craft it like that. Okay, or why we plan to execute it like that. Okay, Pound Australia is pretty similar. You can see on a 1 hour time frame setup, very clear impulse, and this is doing its, you know, correction. So we are focusing definitely on the downside. Higher time frame on Pound Australia, again, you know, pretty similar to Euro odd. There's not much of a confluence. Okay, daily this is rather impulsive to the upside. Okay, which means that this trade here on Pound odd and Euro odd is really more on the lower time frame. Okay, and between Euro odd and Pound odd, one thing you want to factor in also is we have the Bank of England rate statement later for the week. Okay, so Pound has another kind of like news event that is very important for the week. Euro, that isn't any for now. Okay, so you might want to consider that as well, right? When you're choosing, let's say, either of the Euro or the Pound odd. Okay. One more thing to consider on the chart here on Pound odd is that we have this previous low, okay, and we are getting very close to it, which means maybe this can just do something like that and then bounce back up, and then maybe the momentum will just continue to the outside. Okay, so if you ask me, I would say perhaps between Euro odd and Pound odd, maybe Euro odd is a little bit better, right, in terms of the selection of it. Okay, so if you go back to this, okay, Now, if let's say we start to compare, right? Let's say we put pound all aside. So we start to compare like between Aussie dollar and Euro AUD. Both have Australia. Okay, but very quickly you'll be able to realize that one of it we are looking to buy the Aussie, the other we are looking to sell the Aussie. Okay, so like Euro AUD, if you're looking to sell it, you're literally buying the Aussie, and then Aussie dollar here we are looking to sell the Aussie. Okay, so in this case, okay, you might start to like get confused and say that, oh, but how can the Aussie strengthen and weaken at the same time, right? The idea is it won't. Okay, with RBA statement, unlikely, unlikely you will get both of this trade running. Okay, so the idea again is more of like we won't know exactly what's the outcome of the statement, right? It can be bullish for Aussie, it can be dovish for bearish for Aussie. Okay, nobody knows. So the idea here is we are looking at this two setup, and just nice, right? This two setup give us an opportunity to ride on either of this direction. Okay, so as I mentioned, right, the beauty of a breakout is that when it goes in your favor, then you get it. If it is not, you don't get it. Okay, so this part here, you realize that if you put in both orders on Aussie dollar and Euro AUD, then there's a very good chance either of this are gonna be triggered. Okay, because I would say the worst case is that the price just don't move, but unlikely the price will not move, right? So there is a few scenario, right, that we can start to plan out. Okay, so if I put this down, first is Aussie strong, okay, which means the news is very good for Aussie. The second is Aussie becomes weaker, okay, and the third, okay, is more or less, I would say, whipsaw, right, which is neutral. Okay, so this would make Aussie whipsaw, right, which is not something we want. Okay, because it's just going to tag you and then go back and maybe hit your stops. Okay, so if Aussie is strong, then this is the pair that we're looking at, Euro AUD. Okay, if Aussie is weak, then Aussie dollar is the pair we're looking at. Okay, if whipsaw, then this is not ideal. Okay, we'll probably lose the trades. Okay, so that's the part, the top process that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so if you're looking to trade this, then I would say you can put both the orders on Euro dollar and Euro AUD to capitalize on either of this situation here. But take note that the worst case scenario is it's just going to be neutral, and both trades probably get whipsaw. Okay, so you want to factor that as part of your risk management, right? Okay, so yeah, hope it's clear, right? In terms of like this entire thought process of how we approach something like that.